Hey everybody, so the sun is going down, which means we're late. I don't think I've taken a break since I've last met with you, and that was 2 weeks ago. So, this is going to be what we all need, and that's when we are like booked to capacity. Our time is never our time. So many things are going on. You begin to feel your energy just going down and down every day. And so, what do we do to revive ourselves? I'm going to teach you today. And interesting enough, our scripture is just about the same thing, you know? Believe it or not, Jesus was like, I've had enough. And so the last time that we spoke was when Jesus healed the man with the withered hand in the synagogue. It's like after he had healed someone previously, he said, I'm coming back and I'm going to do this again and I'm going to do it worse. I'm going to do it on the Sabbath day and really make you mad. But after he made the Pharisees and the religious people all upset again, he decided to not be reckless. And there's a message there too that we're going to talk about in a moment. You know, Jesus didn't want to just like do something just dangerous for no reason and to continue to come into the synagogue. It was one thing to heal people there, but when he did the healing on the Sabbath and then he put it out in the center for everybody to see that he was defying the law, not necessarily defying the law, but defying the way the Pharisees had defined the law, then, you know, all hands are on deck. We heard last time that he went and they joined up with the Herodians, you know, the people that they considered to be unclean people, the people that they considered themselves to never want to ever have to deal with. They teamed up with them in order to figure out how to take Jesus out. So we're picking up from there, and so we're picking up with someone that's exhausted. I just said that I don't think I've rested since the last time that I talked to you. I've had a ton of things going on. Those of you who follow me on Facebook know a lot of what's been going on. And so what happens when you just get to a point where you're just like exhausted? Depending on what you're doing in life, if you know that you're doing the work that you're called to do, if you know that you're moving in the unction of the Holy Spirit, to just keep going, because at some point, God will give you the break. He'll give you the break. He'll give you the rest. It's coming. Trust me. I've been there, done that. There were times where I didn't know who I was. And then all of a sudden, no one was dying for like weeks at a time. No one needed to be buried. No one needed me to sit in hospice. And I had this long break, so much so that I was like, is anybody I can go visit in the hospital? So you just kind of hang in there. And I always say that whatever God gives you to do, he will sustain you in your efforts to do that, whether it's making sure that you're equipped with equipment, making sure that you're equipped with the financial needs, making sure that you're equipped with the health. Jesus will provide for you when you are doing what he has called you to do. So we just kind of keep going and keep going, but not in a reckless manner. And this is where we're picking up today. Here's what Jesus did. But Jesus withdrew from his disciples. I'm picking up from where we left off the last time. We finally gotten ourselves into chapter 3. We went through the first 6 verses of chapter 3. And now we're going from 7 to 12 on today. A great multitude follows Jesus. But Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea. And a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea and Jerusalem and Idumea, and beyond the Jordan, and those from Tyre and Sidon, a great multitude, when they heard how many things he was doing, came to follow him. So he told his disciples that a small boat should be kept ready for him because of the multitude, lest they should crush him. For he healed many. I want to pause there for a second and just emphasize that Mark says that he healed many. When you go to the Gospel of Matthew and Luke, they say that he healed them all. So here, Mark emphasizes for some reason, for he healed many, so that as many as had afflictions pressed about him to touch him. And the unclean spirits, whenever they saw him, fell down before him and cried out, saying, "You are the Son of God." But he sternly warned them that they should not make him known. It's very interesting things going on in those last 2 sentences. But what we want to talk about, I want to ask you a question. So here again, this is the Gospel of Mark. Mark is more about the energy, the movement. What do we really look like when we're being disciples? It's the action gospel. It's one of the shortest gospels. Matthew's my favorite. It's the teaching gospel. It's where you learn more of the teachings of Jesus. And so in this whole thing that we did the last time, I tried to give you an example of, an analogy, somewhat of a parable, the way that Jesus was telling his story so that it could connect people's minds to what was being said. So I have in your caption there, who are you trying to get near? Or what are you trying to get near? And then what? We have these dreams and goals in life of these things that we want to do, and we work earnestly towards them. Now, Matthew goes a little bit further in explaining the multitudes. Mark is just like many, the multitudes. They were coming after him. But in Matthew and in Luke's the physician, so Luke is always going to give you a little more detail. They extensively start talking about the different regions in which people came from. And when you look at one of the old maps, you can see that they came as far as 100 miles away. Now, they weren't on the metro, they weren't on the Ryder track train or anything. These folks were walking. They were walking 100 miles to get to this man named Jesus. And so what I'm asking you today is, who are you following? What are you trying to get near? When we wake up in the morning, what's your goal? I was talking to someone yesterday, and she just, it's interesting. I never met this woman before. I was at a place that I needed to do some business, and I came in, and she was one of many of the people that were there. But I had came to see someone specifically, so she asked me to help you, whatever. And so later on, after I'm dealing with the person that I need to deal with, he introduced me to her. And then he talked about the popcorn, gave her some popcorn. And so later after that, we had a conversation. So and I'm saying this to say that people will have an opinion of you, and in many cases, you'll never know what that opinion is. And so what kind of opinion, or what type of impression, I should say, are you leaving? So sometimes we'll get in a situation like this where we have an opportunity that's revealed to us, the impression that we made on someone. Because later she's like, oh, when you walked in the door, I was just like, who is this woman? It's something about her. And then as I came near his desk a couple of times, just passing you, I could just feel that there was like this incredible something about you and your energy. And so a couple of minutes before that, as she had explained to her that I was a naturopathic doctor, she started as everybody does, people are funny. She started telling me, I've had this cough. Doctor, I had this cough. I've had this cough going on for the last few months. I haven't been able to get rid of it. And I just gave her some tips, and then I was sharing with her some things, about the pandemic and being in environments like the one that she's working in, and just some precautionary things that you have to do, and some little things that you can do on the side. And this woman says, she started telling me, and because you don't know anything about that's why I didn't tell you the place of business. So she was like, I've been sober for 12 years. And I was like, really? Off of what substance? And you have to be careful too, because people would be like, really? So I've been around some folks. I was like, really? Off of what substance? And she says, well, I've been 12 years free of alcohol, but I used to do cocaine. She started telling me her whole life story, And then I just said some things to her. And this woman started crying. She, happy tears. She was just like, oh, I'm so glad that I met you today, whatever. And I just knew when I first met you, when you came in, whatever. And so I'm saying this because a lot of people think if they're not on Facebook, if they're not in a pulpit, they're not doing whatever, then they're not in a position to do what Jesus was doing. And that's not the case, because we're all ministers, those of us who are believers, and it's a part of our daily walk. And, I said something to her like, you know what? When I get up in the morning, I pray for a lot of folks and a lot of things, but my ultimate prayer is that I will be a blessing to someone today. And sometimes you may not recognize that you're a blessing to someone. It just maybe your smile at someone at a traffic light in the car next to you, that may be the one smile that's going to make the difference for them to not drive their car off a bridge. You just never know. I always tell people in my little fitness book, never underestimate the simple acts of kindness that you can do to people that won't cost you anything. A lot of times won't even cost you your time. And so these are things that we do, and it's how we present ourselves. So it's our lips being in line with our walk in our life that makes so much of a difference. And when that happens, this is the kind of impact that we have. It doesn't matter about what's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It doesn't matter about what's happening, Democrats or Republicans. You can make the biggest difference in the world where people will be like, I want to be a part of you and what you're doing. And then what's important is not to shine the light on you, not to toot your horn or brag, but just emphasize to people that you are the way that you are because you love you some Jesus and you try to follow him. You point the light back to the cross, and then the people come to the cross. And so that's the biggest, and at a time like this when so many people are hopeless, when so many people have issues. Now I could tell you the place that I was at. Most people will walk in here and you think these particular people that are in service are, you know, the powerful, the rich, whatever, and they may be powerful and rich, but they're just like you and I. They put their pants on and they have issues. Everybody has issues. Don't let anybody fool you. And then folks that are powerful, they have more issues. Okay? And so just be you. Be you because you are no longer you, but you live as Christ crucified. And that makes all the difference in the world. And we can just be so impactful. I'm thinking I'm going to go out here, and I knew it was going to be a long session, a long day, and I could just get me some wink eye and some little sleepy time in. And that was not the case. And as people were just bombarding me, you know, when they started tasting the popcorn and stuff, I could have just like shrugged them off. But when you do that again, just even if it's about the popcorn, just the manner in which you deal with people is going to make a difference. It's just so many ways that we can make a difference. When you leave out of a place and people see you leave, that's the woman that has made it clear who she is, a follower of Jesus, that he's the reason that the popcorn business is doing so well. He opened the door for, you know, in the testimony about how the popcorn came to be. You know, you talk about how God made a way. And so they came as far as 100 miles away on feet, walking. And in addition to walking and coming 100 miles, who was coming 100 miles away? Many people that were, they use the word scourged here, and the Greek word for that is painful. People that are sick, but in a sickness that causes physical pain and agony. You know, some of us can be sick, but you may not be, you know, you just might be a little fatigued. But it's one thing when you're in pain. And so it was the people that were inflicted. Yes, other people too, but a lot of people that had been scourged. And then also scourged is also talking about people that are in painful diseases, but also painful diseases associated with an infliction that has been put upon you because of the sinfulness in your life. And so all of these people were coming. And so where were they coming? They were coming to the vicinity of where Jesus were. Yeah, and this is what I want to talk about when I say, who are you drawing near to? When I think about who I would just want to go to a concert or go to hear a lecture from or whatever, I just have to keep thinking. I remember when Yanni was at the Acropolis many, many years ago. So, you know, just beautiful stadium. And in the middle of all the wonderful songs, I love classical music that just makes you feel good. And back then I was really into Yanni. And I remember with everything that was going on, the ambiance and everything else, the thing I remember most, you know, you're talking about a 2-hour concert, the thing you remember most is when he stood there after the most brilliant piece that he played. And he stood there and he says, you know, every great thing in life starts with a single thought in the mind of a single person. And if anyone is capable of doing something great, then we all are. You know, like, I remember that. And I just think that was so powerful because I think we tend to forget that. And we think that, you know, brilliance or whatever, you know, the things that we need, a knife and that thing that makes it so easy to chop things. Who came up with that? Somebody that was trying to chop things with their hands and it wasn't working. And they said, you know what? This should be something that's easy to do. And it comes from the mind of people like you and I. And so Jesus spoke in a way that people wanted to be close to him. I don't know that I would go to a concert and just be so ooh-awed, that I just, when you get to concerts and places, people start trying to touch people, and then just, Michael Jackson concert, oh my God. People was just like, oh my God. I mean, so imagine that, and this is what you have. And why? Not because they loved his music, but because he could change their situation. It's one thing to go and be crazy about somebody that just makes you feel good, and their music is so, Adele, first album, 21, before Adele was Adele. She was right here in Arlington singing at the little dive bar, and even then, before she had become Adele, and she was already Adele, we're sitting there like, whoa, this is some bang music, and then later she would become who she was. But what she had in her was already there. And so you look at someone that can make you feel good, but for someone that can change the trajectory of your life, having been sick, having been inflicted, having been lame, having been blind, having been mute, deaf, that's you're thinking, this can change if I get in the vicinity of this man. Because it says that they wanted to just get near him, so much so they didn't care about what he was preaching. They didn't care about him extending his hand to them individually, because they had heard that he spoke healing into people's lives, that he could just speak a word. So they think he can speak a word. All I got to do is touch a piece of him. All I have to do is get near him. And so Jesus, that's why he tells the disciples, have a boat ready, because I'm not trying to get crushed, not for the single purpose of him not trying to get crushed for his life, but his job, his mission, his goal had not been attained yet. And that's the other reason, the last piece of that sentence, where the demonic spirits, regardless of how you feel about demons, and we went through that a couple of months ago, regardless of how you feel about it or whether or not you really believe in it, at that particular time, demonic spirits were real. When you had people living in the caves, chained in chains, and beating themselves up, and just living in just the wilderness by themselves, there was something going on. And when they would go into convulsions and things, so people were big on that. And so they knew that if it was a demonic spirit would take over them. The man asked, what is your name? He said, Legion, like there are thousands of me in me. And so these are the people that, if they're connected to something that has control, they're speaking, but they're not speaking. Another voice is coming out of them. Something else is directing everything in them. They know that that's outside of them. So outside of the realm is able to connect with that. That's also outside of the realm. That's also supernatural. And that is why the demons, the demonic possessed people, were able to see who Jesus was more so than the regular person. The regular people did not know or would not admit that this is indeed the Son of God. Yes, he's done miracles or whatever, but is he truly the Messiah? Because their view was skewed, because they were looking for the Messiah to come and be one of royalty, and one that would come as a conquering Messiah, the one that would come and take over so that the Jews would rule. And so Jesus was there and he was doing everything else, but because he wasn't doing that piece, they could not allow themselves to believe who he really was. But the demonic possessed people, their demonic spirit that's taking over them, that's really outside of them on a supernatural realm, was connecting to the supernatural realm in Jesus and identifying, this indeed is the Son of God. This indeed is the Messiah. Notice that the sick people came and they wanted to thrust themselves upon him just to get close to him, to touch him. The demonic possessed people, it says, they threw themselves and fell down upon him. It's a difference bowing down to someone and then trying to connect with someone. You bow down to that which you believe is royalty, and above all things, you connect to that you're trying to get something from and receive the gift, the healing. But the demonic spirits bowed down. So Jesus sternly told them, quiet down, on telling people who I am because the time is not right. Because the people, if they would have started really listening to these people and understanding that this is indeed the Messiah, then they would have just started trying to say, here's the Messiah, let's go to war now. There's just been a lot of stuff going on before it's time. That's why I said those last two sentences are important too, because sometimes we see where we want to go, we see the destination, we have our own goals and our own missions, but we're not in the season in which God has prepared that to happen in our lives. And when you move outside of God's timing and his season for various things to happen in your life, that is what you're going to have, and that is what Jesus was trying to avoid. And that was unnecessary war, unnecessary stuff going on because it wasn't the time yet, because he hadn't convinced the people yet of who he really was. But at the same time, everything that we need today is in this passage. It's saying that the folks knew enough that if they could just draw near to him, if they could hear a word from him, if they could get to touch the hem of his garment, then healing would take place. And so for us 21 centuries later, it's saying the same thing, that when we're hopeless, when we're distressed, when we're distraught, when we're sad, when we're lonely, we need to draw close to Jesus. We draw close to Jesus. Healing comes in the sense of peace and joy. And peace and joy is where real healing takes place. The other sickness and diseases that we're dealing with are a result of the cause, and the cause is that we're angry, we're sad, we're depressed, we're cantankerous, because we don't have the joy, the peace, the love, the fruit of the Spirit, because we're not connecting with Jesus. How much of that time, that energy that you would be willing to spend, that distance that you would be willing to travel, the energy and the goal making that you do for all that stuff that you're doing, how much of that is dedicated to spending time with Christ on a daily basis, going down on your knees in the morning and praying, spending time in the wilderness and on a bike trail, in your basement corner, in your cozy chair, just quiet, just you and God. And when that's not happening, then a lot of these other things that are killing us are taking place. So the decision is yours, the choice is yours. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to take a lot of things and put them together and make some fabulous things. So again, I've been busy as a toot for the last 2 weeks. So whatever I may have been preparing to do, I don't even know what I was preparing to do. So what did I do? I cleaned out the refrigerator. And so in cleaning out the refrigerator, you'll always have some things left over. I did a lecture a week or so ago. So I shredded up way too much carrot. I put fresh lemon juice on it, so it still smells fresh. It's still good. It's not wilted. That's the thing you want to look for with vegetables that haven't been freshly chopped. I had some celery that was left over from something, and it's chopped, and it's still crunchy, and I had doused that with some lemon juice as well. So that's good. And one of the reasons that this is really good that we have this is because when we're not well, typically it's because our cells are out of balance. And so what do we do to keep our cells in balance? We must make sure that the two fluids on the inside of the cell and the outside of the cell are in sync. And so the fluid on the inside of the cell is called intracellular fluid. Intracellular fluid is predominantly potassium. And the best source of potassium, organic potassium, meaning that it has the correct amount of oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen, is carrots. The extracellular fluid, the fluid on the outside, is predominantly controlled by sodium. The best source of organic sodium in the food source would be celery. So I always tell people carrot and celery juice will make the body well. Also, if there's sickness or illness or pain and suffering restricted to one side of the body, if it's the left-hand side of the body, typically it's a sodium deficiency. So drink some celery juice. It's not the same as eating celery or eating carrots, because if something is out of balance in the body, then we need to get those nutrients, the sodium and the potassium that comes from the carrots and the celery, directly into your bloodstream. And if the gastrointestinal system is all screwed up or dysfunctional, then that's not going to happen by simply chewing it, because it has to go through that digestive process, which is why we do a lot of raw foods and juices, because you can bypass that, and it puts it already in a pre-digestive state, so to speak. And so what we do is we juice the celery and the carrots to get it directly into the bloodstream. And so that's when you have that hip, that left hip that's bothering you, you go for the celery juice. That right hip that's bothering you, you go for the carrot juice. In the meantime, we eat as much carrots, celery, and beets. These are like your three definite, try to get these every day, carrot, celery, and beet, for what they do to balance out the cellular system. So we had some of that left over, so we're going to use that. And then we always have fresh garlic. I had a red pepper and a green pepper that's going, that needs to be used. They probably still have some life into them. The other piece is that when you get to your vegetables that have not been chopped yet, you simply can throw these into your juicer and just drink them right quick, before they go bad. Then we have a jalapeno pepper. We always have onions. Hello, we always have onions. We always have garlic. And then I had a piece of beet, because I'm always putting beets in my salads. So we're going to use that as well. Now, so we have some what I call and celery things. Now, what do we want to use as a base? So this is why you always keep nuts, grains, and seeds available. So I took some walnuts this morning when I was thinking, oh, today is video day. What are we going to do? I'll figure out what we're going to do later. But what do I need to do immediately? Because I need at least 6 to 8 hours to soak nuts. So I've already soaked our walnuts and almonds. So we can go with a walnut dish. I have extra walnuts if we want to do something really big. And then I have almonds. So now I have many, many, many choices of different types of foods that I can put together. And so for you today, we're going to do something that I don't have any more left. I always keep a nut pate available to eat, so that when my schedule does get crazy, I can come in and I can take a scoop of that and add it to the salad or not. I always have seaweed paper. I have the seaweed wraps. I also have the little roasted seaweed snack sheets, and you can always just stuff that with some pate. And you always probably want to soak some chickpeas and sprout them, because of this extremely excellent nutritional content associated with soaked chickpeas, but also because you can make yourself a real easy hummus to go along with that. I think my clothes are coming apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a dish in 10 minutes. So I have most of the things I need. What I didn't have is as much time as I wanted. So I didn't have this cut up. So I'm going to show you a trick so that I don't keep you too long, and when you are rushing home from work and you only have a couple of minutes because your children are acting like they have not eaten in a week, you can simply take your time and chop all of this up. But since we have to grind you always want to try to hold on to your seeds, because they have a lot of medicinal properties associated with them. So I'm just going to toss them in here so I don't lose a lot of them. So you can chop up this, which is not going to take long at all, but I want to be super fast today. So what I'm going to do is just show you quickly how you can make easy prep work. So you make these things into big chunks. You don't even have to make them into big chunks. You could have just put them in their bowl and you throw them into the food processor. You want a little heat to it. We have quite a few nuts. When you have that many nuts, and the reason I went with that many nuts is because I have a lot of carrots, and I'm just anal like that. I don't like to be wasteful, because I know there are people around the world that don't get a chance to eat. So I try not to throw anything away. That's why I'm always coming up with fabulous dishes, because I just don't like to throw food away. So all we're going to do is basically pulse this so that we don't have to chop it, because in a pate, everything gets all thrown in together anyway, mixed together. So I'm just going to put this on pulse right there. Trick number 2, so that it doesn't become too mushy, is that you pulse down a bit And then you're going to scoop out some and then put the big chunks, because it's on a rotational thing. Take out the big chunks so that you can repulse them. Unless you want it to be more like a mince kind of dish, you can do that as well. Just shy of making it into a juice. You just kind of want to bam, bam, bam. And that's why I really not one. Some people, they never use a knife. A lot of cooks that I know. They use the processor or the small 2-quart one to chop up everything. They're like, Dallas, ain't nobody got time to be slicing and dicing. But really, to me, see, I could have been finished slicing and dicing. Did you just see me take a spoon out? Where'd the spoon go? Okay, so see the texture of that? So that's pretty good. It's not too wet, but you don't care because the nuts are going to be grinded down to somewhat, not necessarily a paste. But so just for people that don't want to spend a lot of time chopping. So we're going to put this back in here. In the meantime, when we did the clergy summit, since I've last seen you, and we had people that were very interested, so we should be coming to a church near you as soon as I can free up my schedule here. There's something missing, the onions. That's what I really didn't feel like chopping today. And the onions are pretty cool too. So if you just take the front and the top and bottom off of an onion, so it stands up, and slice down the middle. And just because you always have a million onions, it doesn't matter that you just take the big chunk off instead of trying to take 10 seconds to pull that thin skin off. Just take an entire thick layer off, and then you can start chopping. Let me show you how it takes 10 seconds. No way we're putting this 1, 2, 3, even if you want them in larger chunks. And then you come thinner down the horizontal side. So it makes no sense to have to use a machine to cut onions. It's just too quick. And that's the thing about peppers. For some reason, they just don't slice as quickly. It's always some drama when you're having to slice peppers. For me, anyway. That's the hardest part of doing all the salads that I do. Is chopping the sweet peppers. Now the large peppers, red, large and green peppers. I feel like the lady in Pretty Woman sometimes. You'd be like, mine is not working. Did you all watch that movie? That's one of my favorite movies. I really like that. Not for the reasons that you probably think, but it's a very revealing movie in the sense of people. You know, there's a scene where she says, no wonder you came looking for me, because of the type of friends that the person had. And that's just life. You know, we find ourselves having to deal with people. I find people having to deal with people that are just like, why are you in my life? You know what I mean? And they deal with them anyway. I am so happy that in most cases, I don't have to do that. You know, I guess some of your colleagues that you have to deal with, and you have to go to luncheons with them, or Lord forbid, travel to a convention and you guys have to drive together in the car for a few hundred miles. Can you imagine being stuck with people that you just, it's like, what's your thing in life? So that's the hard part. So here's the garlic. You always want to add garlic to anything that you're doing, just because of the medicinal properties associated with it. So I am going to, so if you want something to taste very garlicky, unlike thinking that you can just mince up a couple of pieces, that's cool. But if you really want it to taste like garlic, you take your base, which would be your nuts, and you blend the garlic together with the nuts. so that it goes right into the texture and it becomes like a paste, a glue almost. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to make this very garlicky. I don't think you could ever have too much garlic. And then we're going to grind that. And we're almost done. And you've just taken whatever you have available. So you want to make sure that your nuts are soaked for two reasons. They're inhibitors on the nuts because they've been pulled from their shell. They live inside of a shell. So when you take them out of the shell, they go into almost like a state of protecting themselves. That's why you want to soak them, because that layer of protection is what we call inhibitors. And they will inhibit your digestive system from digesting it if you don't do it correctly. So when you soak and sprout them, you're bringing them back to life. So that shell in and of itself kind of like just goes away through the soaking and sprouting process. Which is also why when you soak your nuts, after you've soaked them, you want to rinse them. So that's why you want to keep filtered water around, because you don't want to put tap water or rinse them with tap water. You're kind of defeating the purpose of soaking and sprouting to be well. You're adding some sprout water to it. So now that's pretty simple. See how simple that was? And so here's the rest of it that we had earlier. And you put all that stuff together. So how do we combine this? What brings it flavor? We add a little olive oil. Now, because I but chopped up those peppers, more of the juice is coming through. So in essence, they're wetter. And so because of that, you don't need as much oil, because the oil is basically acting as an emulsifier just to pull the things together. So you do that, and then you're dealing with nuts and seeds. You add a tad bit of sea salt. Now, actually, you can add a tablespoon or so. I don't use as much because I'm just beyond that. But if you're doing it, you might want a little bit more. It's not going to hurt it. Sea salt is that salt that comes from the sea that has lots of minerals and vitamins that the body needs on a daily basis. And whatever your body doesn't need, it will naturally excrete on its own, unlike iodized salt that will stick with you and stay in the body. So basically, it kind of has the texture of like a tuna fish salad or something like that. And so you know how your tuna fish salad is. If you want it to be a little more creamier, you add more mayonnaise to it. So that would be a little bit more olive oil. If you want it to be thicker in texture, then you can do X, Y, and Z. And this is probably a good way for some of you to start if you're not actually accustomed to eating raw dishes, because it can be a lot of roughage for you, and that can be a little much for some people on their digestive system. And so blending up all of your ingredients like that will give it more of a kind of creamy taste. So that's the nut pate, basically the basic dish. Okay, you can take that same green pepper I had, cut the top off of it, take 2 spoonfuls of this, stuff it in there, sprinkle some paprika on it, put it on a platter, and people will think they have some fancy stuffed whatever, and it's, you know, it has a really good flavor to it. You can take a large cabbage leaf and put that in and stuff it. Like I say, I favor the seaweed wraps and things like that. I usually have some hummus on the side with some of this. Definitely slice an avocado and place it on top of it. But what do we have here? We have our carrots. And so now I'm giving mine more texture because the carrots are grated. So that's going to make it even a better dish. So a lot of you are looking, you know, I went to the 40-year high school reunion on Saturday. Thank you, Teresa Thompson, if you're out there. Big shout out to you. You know, they went all out and had a vegan baked ziti dish that had vegan cheese and only vegetables in it. But it was cooked baked ziti, and it wasn't my day to eat cooked food. So I was like, you know, the chef was like, "Oh, you must be the vegan." He's like, it has nothing in it, but it has vegan cheese. And I was like, I just can't eat it because it's been cooked. But, you know, And I would have, but I had a tennis tournament the next day, so I really was not trying to eat that at 9 o'clock at night. And so the chef, with his polite self, he says, well, I'm good. I said, I can just take a lot of the green salad, the salad. They had some side salad. So just give me a big plate of that. And he wouldn't let me have any. He said, well, everybody gets some of that, a little of that. I was like, okay, I'm good. And then I went on back to wherever I was at the table. About 10 minutes later, he came with this big giant salad that had all kinds of good stuff on it. It had some fruit in it though, like strawberries and blueberries and stuff. But because I know how people are kind and they don't have to be kind, I ate it anyway. I don't usually eat fruit and vegetables together. But I ate it. It was a great salad. Had me some balsamic vinaigrette on the side. And so I have this beet, and I'm just, definitely didn't want to put this in the food processor. So I just take a potato peeler, vegetable peeler, and just going to put a little in there to give it some color. And, carrots and beets taste wonderful when they're mixed together. So since we have those shredded carrots in there, just figured, why not use this beet that's sitting here. And then that way I can bypass the salad today, because most of my ingredients that are super important to me are in here. And so what I will do is take a bed of salad greens, some dark green leafy vegetables, put them in a bowl, take a big chunk of this, put it on top, slice some avocados, and put them on top of that. And I forgot to put our celery in here. See what happens when you put stuff over to the side. And so now we just have this ridiculously healthy, nutrient-dense thing going on. It's the salad that you can live off of when your parents go out of town for the weekend, teenagers, and you don't know how to prepare food. And parents, you can leave them this. And even if they have to put it on 2 slices of bread, you can go to the health food store and get some of that, at least some Ezekiel bread. I know some of you've heard of Ezekiel bread. So there's, at the lecture, I was telling people, there's good, better, and best. Because she was like, well, so we stop eating meat. You're not going to stop eating meat if you've been eating meat. This is not going to happen. You have to be very practical with people. And so if we are eating meat, why don't we just say, we're not going to have meat every day if we eat meat every day. Some people have meat for every meal. So why don't we say we're going to start having meat once a day, every other day, once a month. When you start doing that, I can guarantee you, now we have red nut pate because of the beet color. I can guarantee you that your body is going to start gravitating towards more days when you're not eating any meat. You don't have to try and make yourself do this thing mentally and get all charged up. The body will do these things for itself. Because we still have some carrots left, and we want to have a good balance here, I'm going to just blend up the rest of these nuts since we have them here. I'm even thinking I may put a few of the almonds in. And then that way I'll have enough. I can put all of my carrots in. And I can eat a lot of food for the next few days without having to worry about preparing anything. Because I can make this and do it 10 ways to Sunday. Even if I have some people come over, I'll just go grab some of those healthy those bagels with the guy like that at the health food store at Whole Foods. Big Dave, I think he is, or Killer Dave, or somebody. Why is this working when I want it to work? And you can toast it and put the thing on there, or you can get some cabbage leaves or some lettuce. Or do the seaweed thing. Yeah, and so I'm going to leave this like that, a little more chunkier, so that it has a little more texture in it. Because once it's been soaked and sprouted, you can just throw the nuts on top of something. I think what I'll do with the almonds that I have left, just in case you're still listening, is I'll make some almond milk, because I have some corn on the cob that I never got around to eating, and it needs to be consumed pretty quick. So I'm going to take the rest of these almonds, which is about 1.5 cups of soaked almonds. I'll put them in a blender with some filtered water. I'll add a little bit of maple syrup, a dash of vanilla flavoring, and make it into an almond milk. I'll strain it, I'll put it into the blender, and then I'll add the corn on the cob and mix it all together with an avocado in the blender, and it's going to make a fabulous corn chowder soup. And that will be good to have on the side with this. Or you can just drink the almond milk by itself. So I'm going to let our camera person taste this in a while, but this is what I'll have for dinner with something else. And this is going to keep your bowels moving for people that are having problems, kind of getting that last bit of weight off of them. If you're having skin, a little bit of dry skin, a little bit of acne, carrots are what? They're orange foods. Orange foods do what? They're great for the skin because of the extra beta carotene and the C that you have in there. So you have carrots that are doing that. Beets are what we call a burgundy food, so they're more or less a kidney organ food. So they're going to be good for your kidneys, so that's going to help flush out the kidneys a bit. The garlic and the onions, they have high medicinal properties. They're just going to keep you well. We're going into the winter season here. You know, people are already starting to sneeze and cough. These are the things you do to protect your immune system. The only other thing that I'm going to add that I completely forgot are some fresh herbs. So you go get a bunch of cilantro and parsley, chop that up, throw it in, toss it in, and we're good. I think that's the only other thing that was going to make this be like perfect. All right? Thanks for joining me, but the idea is that we put all these things together so that we can make this wonderful thing. So what we want to do is draw near to Christ so that that energy and that peace that surpasses the understanding of the crazy situations that we find ourselves in, the loneliness, the depression, the hopelessness, all of that, once we draw close to Him, it takes us to an entirely different place. I hope this has been helpful. I will look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks when I'll have a lot more energy and we'll have more fun with something sweet. We're going to do something sweet the next time. One of my high school reunion alumni, she says, I showed my aunt this picture of your cake and we want the recipe. That's the 3-layer cake. It's actually a layer of the lemon cheesecake, a layer of the orange pound cake, and a layer of the carob, quote unquote, chocolate torte. So what we'll do is maybe we'll put them all together for you. We might just have to do one, and then it would take us like 3 sessions to do all 3 to show you one at a time. So we'll figure it out, but we'll show you how to do something fabulous sweet on the basis of a cake. Thanks for joining me.